Hello, BookTube. Well, I survived just barely my first day back at work. And I suppose all I can say politely is work is such a four-letter word. But we must, well, some of us must, and I must. I thought to sort of clear my head of all that, I thought I'd crawl back into my books. I will be doing some reading later. I am forging on with English books 1475 to 1900. I'm halfway through now, and I'm on the next chapter is Shakespeare. And it's fabulous. There's all sorts of little tidbits in there, and I wish they would go into a few other details of certain books, because they will say, a complete copy or a good copy or not so good copy in a sense. And sometimes I am familiar with what they're referring to is like maybe the printing, the ink wasn't quite good, so it's not a perfect copy. There could be leaves, pages missing, or part of it bound up with another book, as happened. But it would be nice if they went into a little more detail about that. But I'm sure I could find that information in other books. And it's just wonderful to go through and see. And it always amazes me. Especially, like, this was mostly, well, it's still sort of Elizabethan, and what they call the English Renaissance in one chapter. We hear just the big names, and they're still printed. There was so much, like every generation, every century, so much literature written, fiction, like novels, even then, just so much poetry. Most of it, you don't see anymore. Some of it has never been reprinted since then, and it's a shame because it would be nice. I know you can get on places like Gutenberg. But maybe more so archive.org, where they scan books, and libraries have been doing that and putting it up on the archive.org. Some of them are just fantastic. They're books that you'll never ever see, or most people will never see in a lifetime. But it'd be nice if some of this stuff was reprinted. I don't know if because the ones that you see everywhere, or the ones that have been reprinted, are the cream of the crop. But I suspect there's some gems mixed in there that we haven't seen and hasn't been reprinted for centuries. But anyway, get to the point of my video here. Now, I don't know if it's still done in schools. I would assume in sort of the more private schools or the public school system here in England, such as Eton, Harrow, Winchester, you name it, that if a student reaches a certain level of scholastic achievement or academic achievement, they will, at either the end of the term or the end of the year, receive a prize. And a lot of times the prize is a book. And part of that is there's a little, it's almost like a book plate, but it gives the name of the school. I'll show you some examples, but the name of the pupil as well, and what prize it was, and what they won it in. Say, for instance, Greek recitation or mathematics. Now, I find these very, very interesting, and I do pick them up when I see them. I've probably got about 10 or so, I think, sort of scattered around. I don't buy every one I see, because I do see a lot of them. I buy the ones that the contents of are interesting for me, unless it is something very special about the stamp. And the stamp is usually a gold stamp. Here's a leather-bound book, and that's been done. That's a special one for. It's the Crake Mount House School, the Krantz Edinburgh. I'm probably pronouncing that totally wrong. It's got someone else's previous owner's names in it in the front, which sort of mars it a little bit, but hey-ho. And here, another page that's tipped in. It's a prize awarded to Thomas Hill, Arithmetic and Mathematics, 3 class, sessions 1873. So, this Thomas Hill won this book in 1873. The book itself was published in 1871 by T. Nielsen and Sons, Paternoster Row, Edinburgh, and New York. Now, it's lighthouses and lightships, a descriptive and historical account of their mode of construction and organization, by W.H. Davenport Adams. And the frontispiece is an etching of the Eddystone Lighthouse. So here's the... make sure I don't put my fingers over everything. There's the frontispiece, and then the title page. Ooh, the title page. It's just a beautiful. So it would have been bound and set up probably specifically for this school, unless they bought ones that were already bound up. Sometimes they did that, and then they just had their seal sort of stamped in there in gold. So you see, this is green leather with gold banding surround. The spine is a bit faded, as you can see. It's a bit less green, and the back is the same. It's got the spine ribbing on it, showing where the threads from the sewing was, and the edges are marbled on all edges. Actually, the top would have been, it's quite tarnished, but it was gilt edge at the top. And it's just a nice book with a lot of etchings of lighthouses and lightships, and somebody had pressed a little flower in there. And it's starting to tinge a little bit, and that reminds me I'm going to have to get a little... I want to keep it, so I'll get a little baggie that's acid-free, just a small little thing. I'll pop it in there and then put it back into the book. But yeah, it's got the construction and so forth, and full-page etchings. It's a cute little book. Excuse me, still got this cough. Here's another one, less ostentatious. It is Cowper's, or Cooper's. I've recently just found out that I'd always been pronouncing it Cowper, but apparently it's Cooper, C-O-W-P-E-R, Poetical Works. So this is a less ostentation. It's 3/4 leather, so the spine and the corners, marble edging, and no, none of these, if anybody's thinking, it doesn't have the marble edging paintings on. Oh, that would be fantastic, but those are rare and usually of a certain period. Well, sort of this period, but anyway, this is Christ Hospital, from the gift of George Moore, Esquire, Governor of the Hospital, 1849 to 1876, a prize intended as an encouragement to the attainment of knowledge of the Holy Scriptures, awarded to G.R.C. Fairley, Preparatory School Class 4. And that's put in the attached end paper at the front, and as you see, it's marbled end papers on both. They're nice bright blue, and they're still just very bright, and it's exactly as you think. There's a frontispiece, an etching of William Cooper, and it is let's get the tissue paperwork. The Complete Poetical Works, Oxford edition, edited by H.S. Milford. I had the Mitford sisters in my head for the moment. Henry Froude's Oxford University Press, London, New York, and Toronto, 1907. Title page. It's a nice little book of his poems. It's readable. It's just on the size where if it was a bit smaller, it might be difficult for me. So we move on. A slimmer book. And this is Sigil Oppenheim Admir Mag BR, etc. It's Latin, but I am butchering it. I know. Maybe that goes close enough. Anybody who knows Latin will know what that saying is. And it's the Royal Navy College, Kiam. It says Third Admiralty Prize. Term, order, and total marks at Kiam, awarded to Cadet O.P. Powell. Now, I popped in his name, obviously, to Google. Nothing immediately popped up, but again, that would be an interesting thing to track down who this guy is. There are some Powells that come up, but as I say, it would do you would need a lot more research to find out the correct one. And partially, it doesn't have a date on here, so which is too bad when it was awarded. But it's called the Seven Seas by Rudyard Kipling. It's a Methuen and Company, 36 Essex Street, WC, London, and multiple printings. It's the 28th edition. But again, as I say, they would have either, if there were bound volumes like this, that's the other thing that would be interesting to find out. Is this just, a bound, leather-bound special copy you could buy of the Seven Seas, and then they impress their logo on it, and then put their book plate of sorts inside. It's just poetry, so it's nicely done. It's gilt edge all around, and it's got the border outline in gold. Nice spine. It's not faded, decorated with the red, and the same on the back. Now, as I get back to the binding, it would be interesting to find out if this is a one-off, and that would be really, really cool. If it was just, or they may have had a couple of them bound up and gave it away every so many years, but it was to their specifications. That would be something to look into, and I would find that myself interesting, and it would just make it all the more so interesting. I have one more leather-bound one that I could lay my hands on. It's a little difficult to see. It's a school. It's sorry, I can't, hopefully it's in here. Wimbledon School. I could have just looked in the inside. But as you can see, it's a bit worn. You might be able to see that better than I did. But it's Wimbledon School English Language Prize, First Class, awarded to M.J. Turner, July 1872. And again, it's leather-bound brown, more traditional, rather than the blue and the green one, obviously. But it's got a bit worn again, is the gold surround around the cover, and on the back is similar. And the spine, again, it's got the ribbing. All these do have the ribbing spine. And again, the gold is a little faded through time. And it is essays, historical and biographical, political and social, literary and scientific, by Hugh Miller. It's 4th edition. Edinburgh, William P. Nimmo, it was a big publisher in the late 1800s in Edinburgh. 1870. And yeah, it's just a collection of essays, so hence that's why I was interested in it. And because it's, it's nondescript, it's got some fading, it's, and it's some collectors find this a blemish. It's not a first printing by any means. None of these are. They're not first printings. So a lot of times they're just sold because of the binding that's nice. But to a lot of collectors, this is considered a blemish. I find it quite interesting. Now, it's not just leather-bound books that do this. It would be more traditional school, I guess, public, what I call public school in North America, but here it would be, I forget what they call them, the state school or, council schools. This is, I like the editions of these, and I do pick them up when I have them. I have about 5 of them now. I'll tell you the publisher first. It's Hodder and Stoughton. And I like the, it's sort of not smooth, but you can definitely feel cloth. It's a bit rougher cloth. And it's 100, the best O. Henry stories, 100 stories chosen by Sapper. Now, just a quick aside, Sapper was a pseudonym of H.C. McNeill, and he wrote a lot of books. He died, I believe, sometime in the 30s. A lot of them are sort of around First World War era, Edwardian period, but the biggest, the ones I like are the Sapper novels, and I used to like the serial films too that were made in the 30s, and they're just fabulous. Probably all out of print now. But yeah, here's, as I say, it's stamped on there. See if you can see that a little better, maybe, yeah. And it is, again, it's in Latin. I won't try anything, but it's a Davenport, or Davent Foundation School. Davent. Yeah, Davent Foundation School. And it's presented on behalf of the school on May 19th, 1938. Alderman Charles Robertson, Chairman LCC Education Committee, to C. Rose, a Form 5 matriculation prize at the school examination in July 1937, and the headmaster signed it J.R. Evans. Again, it's just, yeah, I find it fantastic, but again, some collectors will find this a blemish, as is that. But you see, this, to me, enhances it in many ways. It's not a first printing of this edition. It's an 8th printing. There's many different bindings for this kind of stuff. They're sort of plain blue wrappers. I have one. I have 2 copies of one. I used to have I first got the blue one, then I saw this style, and I bought this, and I still have the other one. Always waiting for somebody to pass it on to, and it's just a collection of stories, but off the top of my head I can't remember by who. But yeah, this is 100 stories chosen by Sapper of O. Henry. There's another volume. It's another 100 stories of O. Henry, and basically I think most barring about a dozen short stories in the 2 volumes. Now here's another one. It's the Oppenheim omnibus. Excuse me. And it also has another stamp on the front. And this one does not have a sticker inside. And it's college by the looks of it. I cannot read the rest of it. It is fairly faded off. But again, Oppenheim was a thriller writer. E. Phillips Oppenheim. I like his stuff. Again, it's, first half of the 20th century, along with Edgar Wallace, which again I like too. These are prolific writers, hack writers in many ways, but they're just enjoyable to read. And this is, 41 stories by E. Phillips Oppenheim, the Prince of Storytellers. Hodder and Stoughton again. This one actually happens to be first edition, 1931. And then there's the title page. But it's a little more worn. The cloth is a bit dirty. Could use with some cleaning. But yeah, there's 6 examples of books that were given as prizes. The leather-bound ones are quite nice, and I do look out for those. Well, I could have dozens of them, actually, because I do see a lot of them in my travels, but some of them are still a bit pricey because they are older or a bit rare, but for most collectors, if that wasn't on, then the prices would go up higher. But yeah, I hope that was of interest, maybe something that a lot of viewers may not have seen before, and that's what I hope to be able to supply. Just sort of bringing a few books together that you normally wouldn't see, or you might see and not think anything of it. So I'll try to highlight it in my own little way. So I'll say bye, but I won't say, I guess I'll say I'll be back. I guess I'll say. So have a good evening, BookTube.